My name is Muhammad Abdurrahman. I'm one of the student representatives at the College of Public Policy. It is my honor to welcome you all to what I really see as a community of HBKU faculty and students. We gather every month to learn and share our experiences of academic publishing. Let me firstly start off by thanking the College of Public Policy for endorsing this initiative. There's a lot of hard work that goes behind, planning such an event. I especially want to thank Ms. Aya for all her efforts behind the scenes. Today, this initiative that we're having today is just the second session. Last month was the first one that we had. And let me ask you this. How many of you attended the first session on Feb 19? Oh, wow, nice. That's quite a few of you. And I just want to, tell you this, that look, this initiative is for the students, by the students. Notice how we've changed the timings to 2:30 p.m. now, because last time we felt a lot of you had to sort of rush back and catch your class at 4 p.m. Also, the feedback that you gave last time helped us decide the topic for this session today, right? So it's really important that you keep attending and we keep this community going. Now, the agenda for today, we have two speakers and then question and answers. I encourage you to take notes and ask questions after the two presentations are over. And now to the speakers. So today we're extremely honored to have such distinguished speakers who are also well-published scholars. So speaker one, we have Dr. Leslie Pal. Dr. Leslie is the founding dean of the College of Public Policy. He is the author, co-author, and editor of over 30 books. He has published over 90 articles and book chapters in a wide variety of areas of public policy and administration, information technology, European integration, international human rights, and international public management reform. Thank you so much, Dr. Leslie, for joining us. Thank you so much. I also want to introduce Dr. Hera Amin. Dr. Hera is a postdoctorate researcher at the College of Public Policy. She completed her PhD in History and Sociology at the University of Cambridge, focusing on current transnational Muslim movements. As a postdoctorate researcher, she is part of many projects, including sustainability and education, as well as identity and social transformation in Qatar and Gulf more broadly. Thank you so much, Dr. Hera, for joining us today. So without further ado, let's invite our first speaker, Dr. Leslie.
So do I manipulate here? This way? Great, okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Mohammed, and thanks again to the students for organizing this terrific event. And it is indeed a great honor for the college to be able to support it. And I wasn't able to attend the first one, but I guess the turnout was fantastic, and this is a great turnout as well. It's great to see people coming back for a second session. So I'm not going to. I'll go directly into my presentation. Dr. Heer and I were just conferring before we began, and in a sense, it's a bit of a reverse because I'm going to be much more operational and maybe a little bit more technical. And she's going to be a bit more big picture, but then perhaps you can pick up some of the points that I might make at the beginning and at the end of my presentation. So before I begin on the operational side of things in terms of mastering a literature review, and I should say, just looking at the audience roughly, there'll be some people here that have probably got a lot of experience in doing this kind of work, and others who might be still wrestling with the different steps and procedures and technologies and techniques that are available. So I may be touching on some points that some people are well aware of and familiar with, but might be news for others. So let me, before I actually get into the operational stuff, just make some more general points that seem obvious, but don't always get the attention they deserve when someone is plunging into a research project. I mean, you've got time pressures, you've got an assignment, it's got to be due next week, and you rush into it immediately. It's got to be on subject X, and you begin Googling and searching the library resources immediately on that word that you're searching for, and you plunge in quickly, and right away you're at the deep end, and you're thrashing about and swimming and possibly even drowning in all of the material. So the very first foundational thing is to know your topic, or be clear about the topic. And you should understand that there are different levels to any kind of topic that you're going to be researching. There's a kind of I'm going to be using the same couple of examples through the following slides. So if you were doing something like small state diplomacy versus Qatar and FIFA, you need to, there are different levels in any topic. One is kind of the general area or field within which you're going to be investigating. So in both these instances, small state diplomacy and Qatar and FIFA, you'd be in the broad terrain of international relations. And, you know, there's a whole field of literature that's related directly to IR, to international relations. Then there's a specific aspect of what it is that you're going to be looking at within that context of international relations. And then, and I'm, you know, all of my comments are from the perspective of social sciences, so there may be some hard science people here, but I think the steps and the methodology is pretty much the same. There's always going to be some kind of theoretical aspect or theoretical component, particularly at the graduate level. At the undergraduate level, you might be doing something a bit more descriptive, but in graduate level work, you're going to have to try to address, reflect on, criticize some kind of particular theoretical orientation. So you have to make some kind of choice of what your theory or your hypothesis or your question is going to be. So right there, you see that you've got, you know, 3 different layers or levels: a general field within which you're operating, a kind of specific topic, and then a theoretical literature. So you're almost operating in a 3-dimensional space in terms of marshaling the literature that you need. So before you even begin, you should be thinking, you know, what's the general field that I'm operating in? What's the overall terrain that I'm going to be traversing? What are the specifics of the topic? And then what kind of theory am I drawing on? And then the second point, again, forgive me, it's kind of obvious, but a lot of people don't do it, is actually have a fairly detailed outline of your paper, so that, you know what you're looking for, because the literature review and the literature search is going to be specific to each of the sections of the paper. You may have theoretical introduction, and there you're going to be doing a theory literature review. You're going to then be, let's take Qatar and FIFA. Then you're going to want to be saying something about Qatar as a country and its history and its background. Then you may have something about sports and international sporting events. And then you may have something about FIFA specifically. So in each case, you're going to be looking at different areas of research. If you just start your paper, oh, I'm doing a paper on Qatar and FIFA, and boom, start plunging directly into the QNL databases, you're going to get lost, or you're only going to get a piece of what you really need. So invest the time at the beginning and do a kind of outline, which can change, I mean, depending on how the topic evolves. But the more detailed the outline, the better the guide you have, the kind of compass you have in your journey through the literature and the kind of review that you're doing. So that's all foundational, right? And I'm sure Dr. Hira will come back to some of these points. So building blocks in doing a literature review. Sometimes you're going to be operating in a relatively well-defined field or area of study. So I'm going to use the case of small state diplomacy. So small state diplomacy in Qatar would be an example of a small state that engages in diplomatic activity internationally. When you're dealing with, and I mean, you can get guidance from a mentor, instructor, and on this, but generally speaking, if you're doing something that's already field specific or reasonably well defined, I'm assuming that you don't know anything about the literature. It is really a literature review. You're doing it for the first time. You're exploring, right? You don't know what you're going to be finding. You can start with textbooks or handbooks, because the purpose of a textbook or a handbook is to summarize and review a field, right? So in the case of small state diplomacy, this is the QNL search on international relations. Small state diplomacy is a subfield or sub-aspect of international relations. So you could begin with the QNL search. I don't know how clear that is. I just did this earlier this afternoon. So you know that if the topic of your paper is small state diplomacy, and eventually you want to be dealing with Qatar, you do a search on international relations and IR, and I can't actually read it, but you get a couple of textbooks on international relations and diplomacy. And then this one, I did a QNL search on small state diplomacy. One book seemed irrelevant. It was Regionalism and Globalism in Antiquity. That's unless you're going to be doing something that's an historical paper. But the first one, Turkish Foreign Policy, 1943-1945, Small State Diplomacy and Great Power Politics. If I were doing this, I think, great. I got a book here, I got a textbook. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm going to go into chapter 1, which usually will be the theoretical rehearsal in a book like this. And that's where I'm going to seize on the footnotes and the citations, and I'm on my way. Then I can begin building and doing searches on what I found there. Now, sometimes you have a more specific area of work, which is not a field of study, but it's more like a topic. So this is Qatar and FIFA. And now I'm assuming you're going to be looking for articles. So Google Scholar, when you go into Google Scholar, which is a great resource for these sorts of things. It's free, it's easy, it's quick. You get an initial list of items. I'll show you this example in a moment. But then attached to the initial list for each entry, you'll have two other, just at the bottom, related articles and cited by. And then you can also do this a similar thing in Scopus, and I'll give I'll give this examples of both of these. So this is the Google Scholar search Qatar and FIFA. I think you can see there that you've got a list of articles that have come up as a result of this. And at the bottom, in each case, you've got, for the very first one, it was, again, it's a little hard for me to read, cited by 126, and it's got, and then related articles. So you can follow up on the related articles. So the strategy here is, you enter the search term, you'll scroll through this dump, basically, of items, some of which are relevant, some which may be completely irrelevant, but you isolate maybe half a dozen that are promising, and then you use the sites and the related articles to begin to track around and see the space within which that article has been referred to. And you're basically beginning to carve out the terrain or the field of discussion and debate around that issue, which in this case is Qatar and FIFA. In a Scopus search, I did the same thing, Qatar and FIFA, and it came up with a list of 34 document results. So these 34 document results, some of which again are going to be relevant, not so relevant, you begin to search through those and begin to compile and add to, and you can do both, obviously, Google search, Google Scholar, and Scopus together will begin to build. So look at that. I mean, it's been what, 5 minutes? And I've been able to generate through Google Scholar, Scopus, and QNL doing textbook searches. I've been able to generate probably 100, references or citations if I had gone through all of these and begun to harvest the ones that are relevant and the ones that are useful. So building on what you've found. So let's say we've got, by this point in the space of about 10 minutes, 100 articles / books that are relevant to my topic, which is Qatar and FIFA. What you're going to be finding is probably a few key authors. They get repeated, right? There's 10 articles by author X on Qatar and FIFA or some aspect of the topic that you're really interested in. So you can begin to search their name in Google Scholar because you want to, if they turn out to be an expert on this particular topic or an expert on an aspect of the topic that you're interested in, then you can drill down and find and search the literature through the person. I've been searching so far through the topic, but once you find the person or persons, and this usually is the case in most fields or areas, there are top level experts, leading scholars, and then you read their stuff and their citations and their footnotes, and then again, you're beginning to map out and sketch out the terrain. You can select journals from the list as well. So you've got your 100 articles / books, you've got your key authors, and then you notice that the Middle East Journal is the key journal that's mentioned in 6 or 7 of the different articles. So then go to the journal site and you can begin to comb through the different editions or different issues of the journal to see if there are other topics, maybe a special issue that was published by that journal on that particular topic. And again, you find the articles and then drill back and backwards through the citations. In all cases, follow the footnotes and the citations and begin to build up the literature review. So this is an example of a colleague of ours, Kim Maloney, who's here in the College of Public Policy, and she does actually happen to be an expert on small state diplomacy. And so I did a Google Scholar search on her, and her articles come up, and she's literally currently working with colleagues in the College of Law and the College of Science and Engineering on a couple of articles on Qatar and FIFA and sports management and international organizations around sports management. So this is an example of following the author and not just the topic. Now, I'll end with the point about literature review versus literature management. I think today, with the technologies that we have available in the Google Scholar sites, Scopus library, the HBKU library, QNL, and the vast amounts of material and that are millions and millions of documents. And I mean, there's articles, there's literature on almost anything, and it's almost overwhelming. So doing the literature research today for you guys in a modern digital world is easy. I'm old enough to remember when you actually had to walk over to the library and open a journal and photocopy the article and take it back and file it as a hard copy. That you've got good exercise doing that. Now you can just sit behind your computer, in front of your computer screen, and do it all. So literature searches, if you follow these steps, that's not the tough thing. The tough thing is, how do you keep track of it all? How do you keep track of the 100 citations and the articles? And I'll end here. I'm not going to go into this in detail, but I'm always surprised at how many people don't use citation software. Even scholars and faculty members don't use citation software. The one on the left is EndNote. That's the one I use. It's fairly expensive. It's about 2,000 reals, I think, for a subscription. That's kind of a lifetime subscription, and you get the updates as you go along. But if you're at the beginning of your scholarly career, or even in the middle of it, having some kind of citation software, and EndNote is kind of an industry standard, it's worth the investment because it's something that'll stick with you for all of your MA and PhD and subsequent scholarly career. And it'll just keep track. And then the free one is on the right. It's called Mendeley. Mendeley has all the functionalities, most of the functionalities of EndNote, but it has the virtue of being free of charge. You just have to build an account, and it's you can build up your Mendeley data set of citations and then migrate them into EndNote once you start making some money, pay off your debts as a student, and then and actually can purchase the software. So so you're not tethered or tied to Mendeley. It's really ultimately probably the most important part in doing literature review, because the literature management, knowing and being able to use the citations easily in terms of writing. There's another functionality of the citation software. It doesn't just keep track of your citations, but it has, most of them have a write and cite, or cite and write kind of functionality. So as you're writing in a Word document, you can just draw quickly on the database, and then boom, like magic, your citation appears in the format you want, Chicago APA, and it generates the automatic bibliography for you at the end. Again, I can't figure out how I did this before, because before citation software, I would actually type in every footnote, and if you made one mistake, you have to go back and correct it. Now, if you get it right, excuse me, the first time in your database, it's right forever. And on top of that, you can put your notes in. You can attach the PDF version of the document. So it gives you a full space or facility for managing the citations, your notes, observations, and the actual PDFs and the documents themselves. And the last note, and this just occurred to me after I put these slides together, the other thing to do is also keep a kind of research journal, because it's one thing, again, to have all the citations in a database, but you have a kind of, the literature review is also a journey of observations, of analysis, of reflections, of what you did when you consulted, which journals, and you lose track of it if you're doing a fairly complex, large project. So keeping a kind of research journal of what you did almost day by day, that you can go back to 2 months from now and say, oh yeah, I already reviewed that journal. I don't have to do it again. Or an observation that you made that can be helpful in terms of your reflections later when you're doing the work. So I will end there. I've probably gone over time. Thank you, and good luck.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nestle. That was indeed very insightful. We have lots of questions for you, but we'll keep the questions till the end. Let's have Dr. Hira. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sonika and everybody. Thank you so much for the team for organizing this, and Dean Leslie Powell for speaking. I feel a bit shy to speak after him. It's such a force in the field. When he kept saying hundreds of articles, it was just my tummy was a bit queasy. So I'm going to speak a little bit, just a bit about what is a literature review, and maybe give a an opinion of, or the way I would do it for someone who's not as an expert as Dean Leslie Powell is. So, firstly, right, I want you to imagine something. I want you to imagine that you have one puzzle piece, okay? So this is the one puzzle piece up there. So you have one puzzle piece in your hand. Your task is to complete this puzzle. You have to make sure that your piece fits in the right place. What do? What's your strategy? I know this is a fairly simple puzzle, but imagine you've got a puzzle piece, you have to fit it in the right place. What's your strategy? What do? Someone tell me? Excellent. So number one, the first thing you do is think about what is the bigger picture. Right? What's the second thing you do? Okay, great. So that's the bigger picture. Good. So now you have your puzzle piece. You've got an idea of roughly what it looks like. Now? Excellent. So now you're going to look at the edges. Right, the top is blue, it is the sky, so now connect it to the top. The bottom bit is green, so now you start to really see the little details, right, where it is. So what has this all got to do with literature review? I'll get to it. So your puzzle piece that you have, this is your study. This is your work. This is what you have done. So this is your research area. The rest of the puzzle is the literature. This is what others have done. So journal articles, books, what's already been published. So a literature review is essentially two things. One is knowing what the bigger picture is, the full picture of the puzzle. Like we said, that's the first thing you do, right? What is the full picture? And second is explaining how your work fits into that bigger picture. So like we said, like the lady said, right? The puzzle, which piece fits in? How is it going to fit in? So bigger picture and how your work fits inside this bigger picture. The relationship between the bigger picture and your work. That's the idea. So now let's look at this into more detail. Okay, so what is a literature review? So first we said that literature review is giving a full picture, a snapshot of the literature related to your topic. This means answering questions like, what are the key debates in your field? What are the key arguments? What are the key theorists, the key studies? Were there any major shifts over time? What are the key texts and debates that shaped the wider field? The whole point is to do number one, demonstrate the awareness, a solid awareness of the wider field. So, for example, one of my students now, she is writing her master's thesis on maternal health in Kenya. So that's maternal health, so maternal health, so when a woman is pregnant, going through childcare, the healthcare in general. So in her literature review, she's got a section on global maternal health, looking at the trends, then maternal health in sub-Saharan Africa, then maternal health in Kenya. And then she looks specifically. So you can see how she's demonstrating knowledge of what is happening in the wider field and then narrowing it down to her specific field. So very, very similarly, Dean Leslie Powell, when he talked about his example of FIFA and Qatar, he looked at the different fields, right? So is it small state politics, sports, the idea of Qatar in the Middle East. So bringing these wider debates and narrowing it down. The second main function of the literature review, and this is where most students find difficulty, is to show where is the gap in the literature and why is this gap important to fill and how your study will fill this gap. So where is the gap? Why is it important to fill? Because there could be a gap, but the reason why people haven't filled it is because nobody cares. It's not important, it's not significant. So you have to say, there is a gap and it is significant, it's important to fill it. And here I am, I'm going to fill this gap.